Hi, my name is Mick, and I'm currently working on draft 2 of my high fantasy retelling of Arthurian legend codenamed Project Camelot. The clips in this video are from the end of January, and it was my last week of Christmas break. So, yeah, hope you enjoy. When I started working on draft 2, I was working chronologically through the book, and I was going from chapter 1, making all the major edits that I wanted to make, and just going chapter by chapter. But then I hit a point in part 2 of the book. The book has 6 parts, and when I got to part 2, I started to feel like the book just, like, the plot in that section wasn't feeling right. And initially in draft 1, I had this like plague plotline that breaks out in the beginning of part 2, and it kind of like threads its way through the rest of the book, but it is like the major obstacle of part 2. And I decided that I actually need to cut that plotline altogether because it wasn't serving the story, and it was actually just creating a lot of like consequences that was very limiting to what the characters could do or couldn't do. So, like, obviously, with a plague and people are dying, everyone is at risk. There's like limited amounts of like movement that's allowed. These, like, the main characters are part of the royal court, so they're not going to be interacting with just anyone when there's like a plague going around. And so it kind of limited like how I could go about telling the story. I think it's for the best that I cut it because it allows me to streamline the events of the main storyline. Since I'm cutting that from part 2, well, from the book entirely, but specifically it being like that central thread of part 2, I have to find another obstacle that ties the FMC and the MMC together, because their plot lines are running separately. Like, they're both focused on completely different things. There needs to be like some central thread kind of overlapping between their plot lines to bring in that cohesiveness. And I know it has to do with like one of the main antagonists, but I have yet to figure out like what exactly that obstacle is and like how that manifests itself in the plot. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of plot and structure still. By the end of January, I'm hoping to get a good amount of structural work done on draft 2 of the book. What I'm currently doing is drafting the new scenes that I have to add. So one of the big changes I am making from draft 1 into draft 2 is I'm cutting 2 of the points of view, so that originally there were 4 narrators and now there's 2 narrators, which is for the best. Like, it makes the book so much better. But now those scenes that I cut from those other 2 narrators, they need to be replaced, rewritten from one of the other characters' points of view, or they need to be like replaced with something else so that it accomplishes that same like story beat. The way I've like structured my draft 2 document is like, originally I was like going through and like rewriting chronologically, but then when I realized that there was still like some big changes that I needed to make, I went into my draft 1 document. I took the scenes that I knew were going to carry across into draft 2, pasted them into my draft 2 document in the like reordered version of the plot that I'm going with now. Like, there were some like events that I just wanted to like kind of shift around a little bit so that the like causality makes a lot more sense, and it's like a lot stronger. So I did that, and then I have been adding the scenes that are still missing. Once I've finished adding the scenes that I need to add, I'm going to continue with my like big rewrites of scenes. So there's a lot of work to be done in part 2 since I'm cutting that like plague plotline. And then just like throughout the book, there's going to be like small like context changes that I need to fix and stuff like that. So that like pass through the book is going to be like big plot structure changes. And I've also been doing some like character work and world building. But then I'm going to do a second pass through draft 2 and really focus on like the character arcs, the side characters, making sure that everything is like fleshed out with the descriptions and the world building and all of that like finer stuff. I've really like defined the steps that I want to take now with revising the book. This is the first book that I did a first draft of, and now I'm doing like a draft 2 with like some major revisions. So it's been kind of like a learning curve for what my process is, and I think I've figured out like how I want to go about this. My first read of the year was A Psalm for the Wild Builds by Becky Chambers. That was a reread for me. It's one of my favorite books, and I still really loved it on my second read. And I'm currently reading Silver in the Wood. It's really good so far. And I'm enjoying like the atmosphere of it. So yeah. I've written about 600 words today so far, and I'm gonna do another writing session before I go to bed. I'm trying my best to like slowly shift my sleep schedule earlier, so this is definitely gonna be earlier than what it's been the last couple nights. Pretty much like all of my break. It's been like especially bad since like during finals. I was like going to sleep at like 4, 5, 6 a.m. and then waking up at like 11 because most of my exams were at like 1 p.m. Most of them were at 4 p.m. and I had one at 1 p.m. So I was basically nocturnal for most of my final season. But yeah, I want to wake up early tomorrow because we have some errands to run. So I want to wake up early and write before we go. I'm gonna write a little more and probably go to bed at like 11. I've been kind of jumping around between the scenes that I haven't like written yet. So I'm currently adding words to chapter 28, which is kind of like just before the climax of the book. Like, I feel like the structure is a little weird right now. I feel like, let me pull up like some Save the Cat structure. Actually, the midpoint of the book is chapter 19, and then part 4, which is chapters 20 to 24, is essentially like the bad guys close in. 25 to like 26 or 27. 25 to 27 kind of feels like all is lost. 26 and 27 is all is lost. And then 28 to 30 is... Should I be saying like the entire book structure right now? Anyways, I mean the chapter numbers might change because I have like some shuffling around to do. But I mean, I keep doubting myself in that like I didn't like structure the book properly, but I did structure the book properly. Like when I like compare like the beat sheet next to like my chapter outline, it's like very much in line with like traditional plot structure. If like yeah, like the lengths, like the percentages are probably like not exact. I'm working on chapter 28 and it's interesting like doing this now because this was essentially like a bit that I didn't write at all in my first draft because I just wasn't in the headspace to write it, even though it was like one of those scenes, one of those chapters that I was super excited to work on because it's like everything is just like going crazy. Looking at what I'm kind of like rough drafting right now for it, this wouldn't have been as nuanced if I'd written it in my first draft. Like now that I'm writing it with the perspective that I have of these characters and of the story as a whole, it's like even just like my zero draft of this chapter is a lot better than like what I was doing in my first draft. So it's good to know that like as I keep working on this, I'm getting like an even clearer image in my head of what this book needs to be. And like I really have a strong image in my head of what this book needs to be. I was kind of still torn on what the FMC is like. She's the main protagonist, and I was torn on what her main motivation for like starting this journey that she goes on. Before the book starts, like there's like a lot of context to why she's doing this, and it's not really clear why she's doing this until you probably hit like part 3, I think. Part 3. So I was like outlining, I think it was last night, I like wrote out like all of this is like me just like writing out exactly what her intentions are throughout the book. And it's like it's so obvious to me, like this is like what I knew, like the kind of arc she needed, but I've been like so resistant to making her as unhinged as she needs to be, because like she's definitely not the like chill, docile character, but she's also like not a warrior, kind of like a fighter type, that like the strong kind of female protagonist. So it's like a little bit like different, and I don't really want to like specify exactly like what she's doing because that's like a big spoiler. That's like kind of a core part of the book. But yeah, like I think as I work on this draft, I really just need to like like get myself together and really commit to what this character is asking of me and like what I need to do for her in this book. There's definitely like layers to her, and she's really easy to understand once you get like the full picture of what's going on. But there's like layers to things. She's being quite secretive. I also like outlined a bit of dialogue in a scene that I know I need to write, but I'm not sure where it's going to like fit in properly, because it's not just like these two characters have a conversation. These two characters need to meet in a very specific context. Like, one of the characters is not human. So getting them to meet when they're from two different places is going to be something I have to figure out. So I know it needs to be like, this scene needs to be in the second half of the book, probably part 4, but I need to figure out like where to fit it in. But it's like a scene that really brings together like the whole like central theme of the book, and it's also like, it's like that thread that ties in with the title of the book, essentially, because I do have a title that I basically think I'm committing to this title. So yeah, it's like all the pieces right now like falling into place, and like I'm just like really excited to work on the book. But my problem is like, I don't have like the time to just like freely work on this. I'm starting school on Monday. Today's Wednesday. So like, if I finish draft 2 before June, it would mean that I would need to work through my semester, and I don't know if I'm gonna have the energy for that. The only way to like fit in writing for me while I'm in school is to fix my sleep schedule so I can wake up early, because waking up early will be like the only time that I have the mental capacity to work on this, because writing at night is dangerous. And I should go right now because I want to sleep. I am hoping to hit 65k in the draft tonight though. I just need to write like 340 words, I think, to hit 65k. So I got a new book today, which is Susie by Madeline Miller. I've been wanting to read this for a while because I love Song of Achilles, and I think there's something about this that I know like the tone is gonna be something that reminds me a lot of the FMC in Project Camelot. So I'm excited to read this. I think this will be my next read in my physical TBR. I also got this week, which is 100 Years of Solitude. I've been wanting to read this for a really long time, for years. So I'm really glad I have a copy, and it's like a really nice cover as well. It's a Penguin classic. It looks really nice. So yeah, I also bought this last year. I think since August, and it's Gatsby. I've actually never read Gatsby before, because we don't really study a lot of American literature here, unless it's typically like by Black authors and poets. This is my, like, the thing about this book is it's good. I really like it. It's just absolutely gigantic. It's like physical reading experience, not the best. yeah, I'm like almost halfway through. It was going really well, but I don't know, like I had like a mental block to this. I need to finish it. I think the only unread books I have other than these are my copies of Lord of the Rings, which I also really want to read, but I think that's something for much later. I have a high fantasy series that I've been like playing around with. It's my fun project. I want to read Lord of the Rings before I like start properly working on that series. I like zero drafted the first book, but the series is actually like 7 books. So it's the 19th of January, and I've been working on buffing up like the scenes that weren't written yet, and then I started to re-outline the book because I decided to make some changes to part 2, which I hadn't re-outlined yet, and I was also going back into the climax of the book and re-outlining the events and trying to like tighten the like chain of events that happen at the end, because like obviously like things happen very quickly and I want to make sure that the timeline makes sense, but also because it's 2 narrators, I wanted to make sure that their scenes made sense in like relation to each other, but also like the timelines were making sense, because that was something I was unsure about. But yeah, when I started to do that, I was starting to feel a bit like doubtful about the project. Like I was starting to feel like maybe the book isn't good. Like I've been working on it for like not even a year yet. It hasn't even been a year since I got the idea. You know, it's like it's fine to be confused about like the direction to take it in. You know, it just takes some time. It takes some like thinking. But I've been like really confident in the fact that I can make it to a standard that I want to make it, because I think the foundation of the book is really good. And then yesterday I was starting to feel that like genuine like doubt in if the book would survive me restructuring it and trying to make it stronger, if it would just like make the book crumble. And I was like, maybe the book isn't good, you know, at all. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like go into like text to speech on Word and listen back to some scenes. So I ended up listening to I think 2 chapters in or 3 chapters in part 3 of the book, and then I listened back to about the first 4 chapters in the beginning of the book, and my view was realigned with being at least somewhat confident in the fact that the book has potential. And I think my skill level is good enough right now to make it something that I am proud of and I would be happy to share with other people. Even if like this book doesn't reach anywhere, I would be fine with it because I love the book so much. And I think that's been like the defining factor in how like consistent I've been with this project, is because I'm just like so obsessed with like the concept of it, and I want to see this book exist because I don't think there hasn't been like an Arthurian retelling with this specific kind of take. And so I want to make it exist. I want to be the one to write this because I'm very passionate about seeing this specific take on the legends. When I read back some of those chapters, it's not there yet. Like, I still have a lot of like nuance edits to make, like in terms of fleshing out description and slowing down the pacing of each scene, making sure that like the line edits are clean and that everything is really tight, and the descriptions are in line with the voices of the two narrators and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of work, but I can see the plot and the way the themes and the character arcs are tying together. And I love the personalities of the main characters, the main four, especially. Like, above everything else, this is a book that I love. I'm enjoying writing it. And that is so important in making it to the end of your first draft and then bringing it to life through edits. You really have to love the project and want to make it the best version of what it can be able to see it through the end. This is like the first project I've ever like started like full scale revisions on. Like, the first drafts I've done before, I would edit as I go. Like, I always have to like go back to Act 1 and like rework Act 1 and edit it to make sure that it sets up the whole book, because I always find that Act 1 for me is always the weakest. I always have a lot of problems setting up everything. So my experience with editing has always been majority with just Act 1. And now that I'm like reworking an entire book where I know the entire arc, it's been a different experience, obviously, and I'm learning as I go. But yeah, I also have to remind myself that like I have not been working on this book very long. I only got the idea for the book in February 2024, and I started the zero draft in May. So it really has not been that long at all. Like, considering how long I usually take with writing books, this is like the fastest I've ever gotten to this stage of like having a book shaped thing. The clips I have are just from this week, and usually I will film for like close to a month. But I think this is a good stopping point. Happy writing. Bye bye.